me again. Get to know your inner polarizer. Find out how to counteract your inner polarizer. And it says on there, use metacognition. This is what people do that grow in wisdom. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. In other words, before you say something, before you react, you process it in your mind in advance and think, is that really what I want to do? Or really what I want to say? Or what is going to be the consequences if I say it like that? Yes.
And it could be also called mindfulness.
And it's also called mindfulness. Metacognition, mindfulness, one and the same. Become aware of your thoughts. Most of us, or many people, go through life without ever thinking about their thinking. So today we're going to think about our thinking. We're going to practice being critical productively. By the way, it's okay to be critical, but do it in such a way that's productive. We all sometimes screw up. I screwed up on Thanksgiving. See, does that get you on the end of your see? You want to hear more? Okay. It's Thanksgiving. I've got a 48-year-old daughter that's interacting in the living room with my 14-year-old granddaughter. Well, my other daughter and myself are in the kitchen slaving over the hot stove and doing all the cooking while they're laughing about Snapchat. And then I'm getting ready to start dishing the plates, and I've got my 95-year-old mother there, and I've got to cut up her meat and give her ready because she can't do that herself. And my 48-year-old daughter comes in the kitchen wanting to show me this funny little video on Snapchat, and I'm trying to dish up the potatoes and the gravy and stir everything, finish the mashing, and I'm like, I really need an adult in the kitchen and not a 13-year-old. I was not thinking about my thinking before those words came out. It was okay to think that. It was not okay to say that. The good thing was I apologized profusely later. But nevertheless, that's why it's important to think about your thinking. We're going to learn ways to help others to depolarize through your example. The more you model certain behaviors, it catches on like a wildfire. So let's take a look at this crisis of polarization that's going on right now. It would help if I turned to the correct page. There we go.
So wonderful graphic.
You like that graphic? Yeah, but I don't want that graphic. I want to throw away. I want them to start embracing like our little stuffed animals in the back of the room. You see, it's okay to have disagreements. We need to have disagreements. We need to have disagreements in a healthy democracy. You look at countries around the world where people are not allowed to disagree with each other. We can. But the problem is when disagreements become toxic. When we stop just disagreeing about the issues, but we begin to demonize people who believe differently than we do. And this leads to a crisis that degrades trust and it harms personal relationships. So what we want to do is to focus not on changing people's minds, but discussing issues and being open to listening. And out of those discussions, hopefully, something good will happen. Because it's costing all of us this polarization that's going on. You're seeing it in your community, you're seeing it in your families. Anybody brave enough? I've already shared about my family. Anybody else raise your hand if you've had a breakdown in relationships that are important to you besides me? Okay, so we're seeing it. I want to tell you that there is hope. This same son that told me, Mom, I don't even know who you are anymore. We are now able to have really good discussions. He has attended a lot of the workshops that I've done online because he lives in Maryland. And so we do Zoom things a lot of times, and I will invite him, and he's tried to come to a number of them. And as a result, we can sit in his living room in the evening after the kids have gone to bed, and he really likes good bourbon. I mean, good bourbon. The first time he asked me if I'd like some bourbon, I said, yeah, you have some Coke to mix in. And he said, you're not putting Coke in my bourbon. So look, have a little bit of bourbon, we'll have a good conversation. Where we talk and we listen to each other, and our relationship has mended. 66% of people see that the opposing party is a serious threat to the United States. 57% of Republicans, this is data, I've got the sources if you want them. I doubt you want them, if you do, I've got them. And 41% of Democrats now think the other party is the enemy. 15% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats say the country would be better off if large numbers of the opposing parties just died. So we're going to do a little activity that some of you already dived into, but that's okay. If we want to depolarize our families and our communities and beyond, the place we have to start is with ourselves. And sometimes we're not even aware that what we're doing is polarizing. I have to tell you, I was not aware that what I was doing was contributing to polarization. It was everybody else. I was trying to fix things. But I was polarized. And I didn't mean to. So you've got an activity on the first page of your participant guide. It says recognizing my inner polarizer. And I'm going to ask you to take about 3 minutes to do this. And I'm not going to give you any more time than that because I don't want you to think about the answers too much. I want you to circle the first answer that comes to your head, and I'm asking you to be humble, to be honest. For instance, if it says, how often do I feel a rush of pleasure with friends when we ridicule those crazies on the other political side? You guys would never, I don't think. Because I think all of us at some time or another have done that. So you've got 6 questions. And would you please take 3 minutes to circle or check often, sometimes whatever for each one of these. And by the way, you don't have to show this to anybody, so you don't have to be politically correct. Be honest. You got 3 minutes. Someone in the group earlier today said there should be one that says rarely. And I think that would be a good addition to it as well. So if you want to write in rarely.
Yeah, I think better than never.
Okay, if you're not quite finished, go ahead and finish up the one topic. You saw this on the bottom of that page that you're doing, and what we're wanting to do is we are wanting to move us clockwise. Because what we're looking at, if you look at the far left, the diagram up here, these are the feelings of absolute hatred. And we know people that have those feelings toward the other side, where they see them as they are enemies. They want to harm our country. And if you move a little further clockwise, okay, maybe I don't hate them, but I have a lot of disdain for it. And they may not be enemies, but they're deplorable. And they may not want to harm the country, but they're ignorant and they should know better. And then look at it and think to yourself, what did I learn about myself when it comes to polarizing attitudes for the political other? I did this workshop one in another church in LA. And I'm not expecting Hannah to Reverend Hannah to react this way. But the minister of that church actually started to cry. And she had taken that survey and she went, I didn't realize that about myself. So what we're going to do is take about 30 seconds. Just think about the answers that you put down there. What, if anything, did you learn about yourself? And I'm asking you to practice mindfulness and metacognition here. You're even about what you were thinking. Okay, we are going to get into our first breakout group. And this is the way this is going to work. And have a whole 5 minutes in groups of 3. And during this time, you're going to go around and give your name, where you live. Summarize your self-assessment. That doesn't mean you go to your point by point what you said. Just summarize the gist of what you learned about yourself. Take turns talking. Try to be concise. Discuss commonalities and differences if there's time, which there won't be. Share your thoughts. Don't try to all come to consensus. So, what makes this great is that we can work in groups with people we don't know. And I know that we're tending to sit next to people we know. And probably most of the people in this room do know each other. But could you please, it's easier, you just, you know what, I love about these chairs is they move, you know? Yeah, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to get into groups of 3. Ready, set, go.
And as far as the science, it's an possibility of simply and it is very clear. West of
It's like East Coast spring. It's yes. I go every 10 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks. We stay in common, we don't live with us. Right. We stay in common nearby. And last week, and it was there. It's a 10 week sentence. On Wednesday to be there.
Yeah, the whole case.
Yeah.
Right here, right here, right here. Be there.
And sometimes,
How about you?
and whole time we have a history book here. So, yeah, they do. So I just tried to from and going how to for the whole right? I get infinite practice. Yeah, infinite. I am not even in the United States that often. Yeah, so I have been in Asia and in Europe more this year than in the United States. So I get lots and lots of practice. I find out so good instead of them just making it kind of a blunt comment, well, I'm not gonna say, oh, we'll get you little guys, oh, stay away from the background, or, just get their background of us. Oh, just see where they're coming from. They make so much sense. Absolutely. Yes. Other song now. Hey, I went on the super show once with this 28 challenge friend. So how do I that combo through? Whatever I want to. You Buddhist? Okay, well, so I let it out. Oh, God, good. But no, it's there's so many. We get on so many. Now, chairs all over. I didn't know that. Yeah, not awesome, not like the exception. Yes. So you don't have to, make that big transition. Brings a lot. So, like that's good. Oh, you love it. This is yeah. Okay. Okay. We're going to maybe share with anybody that wants to share. And the question is, what did you learn about yourself from this exercise. And again, this is, you're thinking about your thinking. What did you learn about yourself? Is there a couple of great people that would like to share? Thank you.
I talk too much.
Actually, guys, we were talking about what did you learn from the worksheet you did? Would you like to try again? I'm gonna get you.
Well, with regard to the worksheet, I took, I was different, I differed from your desire to go all the way to the right on the sheet in a certain regard, because I felt that there were times when both sides, what they call these days, both sidesism, which is a term that everybody may not know, is about
So what did you learn about you that you felt like you don't really need?
that I don't agree with going all the way to the right.
Okay,
I got sharp.
okay, where would you like to be on there? I mean, if it's ideal, it's, boy, am I putting you on the spot, see what you get for raising your hand? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I mean, I don't know if there's a place, I mean, I circle pity, but I mean, I don't know if there's a place here for,
Okay,
you know, understanding. Is there, if there was an understanding,
I understand you.
then I would do that.
I love it. Yes.
Perhaps empathy, instead of pity.
Empathy. Okay, great. Most would like to share anything that you learned about yourself. Naya.
Oh, I should, pity, at the bottom, pity, and I realized that if I pity an individual, it keeps the anger. And if you're feeling sorry about somebody, I can't feel angry towards them. And I feel protective of myself. I'd rather pity the person than feel anger about them. And it also is a lack of respect when you pity in a way, because you don't regard them very much, but I'm protecting myself from the anger.
That was very insightful. You were really digging deep for that, and I appreciate that. Anybody else want to share what you learned about yourself?
I was on the middle too, the pity scale.
Yeah,
And I found that, like, when I pity someone, that I'm being judgmental of who they are. And, you know, I would think like whoever cast the burning stone or something, it's that type of thing. And so I need to work on being less judgmental.
I would love the fact you're thinking about that. Thank you. Anybody else? You got time for one more.
My thoughts overall are that, I look at things, the group of things differently than the people. You know, the people I understand, they're individuals, everybody's got an opinion, everybody has an opinion, and they're all entitled to that. And I don't understand where all it comes from, but that's my problem. That's something that I didn't forgot. So it's right to get into these conversations with people that love and care about, because I don't want to get into an argument.
Yeah, we sometimes avoid it.
So I often, I got myself avoiding it, and I don't want to do that because these are important issues. But they are all the issues. We can agree to disagree, and we need to understand it and not be so judgmental on people. Judge the issues, not the people.
Okay, you just actually segued very nicely into something we're going to do in a minute. So where do we start depolarizing? Well, first of all, being aware of our thinking. Being aware of how we talk with like-minded people about people on the other side of the issue. You know, when we get in our little comfort group of like-minded people, we can become really nasty when we're talking about the other side. We can. And we need to be aware that we are contributing to polarization when we get with our group of people that are part of our tribe, and we're talking about those people, we need to be cognizant about what we are saying. Are we being respectful or disrespectful? Because that contributes to polarization. And then obviously, how do we talk to people who see the issue entirely differently than you do? And so part of what helps is looking at these, what I call the four horsemen of polarization. Oh, yeah. The first one, well, I'm gonna just put them all up there, so I don't have to keep tapping. We become agents of polarization, meaning we contribute to polarization when we use any of these four. And it's stereotyping, where we're lumping everybody in one group, dismissing their ideas, ridiculing them, speaking with contempt. And why do we do those things? We do those things because from the beginning of time, we have been tribal. Even as early cavemen, we got into our little bands that were tribes, and it was us against them. And it gave us a sense of artificial unity, that we were together in this. It also gives us an outrage machine where we can just get all of our frustrations out, say all the things that we're thinking. It sometimes gives us the illusion that we have some sort of political promised land. If everybody in the country could think like us. And as we retreat into those political silos, people on the other side become not just strangers, but it's easy to call them enemies or see them as enemies. And how we talk about them among ourselves can either fuel the fire that threatens our democracy, or they can bring the temperature down. And we don't want to talk in ways that continue to escalate. The news and social media do a really good job of that for us. So if we learn the discipline of using non-polarizing words and having a less polarizing attitude, maybe we can start seeing ourselves as Americans again, and not us and them. So what are some strategies to counteract this? Well, a lot of us recognize that we would like to feel differently, but I would say a lot of folks just have no idea where to start. People are so upset, they're angry, they're afraid, they are dismayed, they feel like they're living in a twilight zone world. And it's like, how on earth are we going to counteract what's going on inside of us? And that's where the metacognition comes in again, thinking about our thinking. So one of the things that I found that helps is getting to know people beyond their group stereotype. You see, the truth is that if you tend to lean blue, and I really hate using blue and red, but we haven't come up with a better thing yet. You tend to lean blue. You feel like you understand your own side very well. But because you're not talking to people that see things differently than you, unless maybe you're turning on divisive TV station, you're going to come up with stereotypes of what you think the other side is like. And so I have done so many workshops called red and blue workshops. And from these red and blue workshops where people get to know each other better is where we've generated a list of stereotypes. Now, obviously, not all of these stereotypes are universal, but these are the ones that we see most commonly coming up in these workshops. Okay, this hearing is rebelling because this morning on my way here, I had my earrings laying on the car console, and I was drinking my broccoli and kale, all that other stuff, and my earrings slipped off. I put on the brake. I found this one when I got to the bottom of the glass. It was covered in purple and green slime. So that's probably why it just slipped off my ear. So anyway, stereotypes, people who lean red. These don't apply to everybody, these are general. These people that lean red, people that lean blue, look at most of them as they're all Bible thumpers, Christian nationalists, they're racist, they're anti-immigrant, they're homophobic, they're anti-women, they're anti-science, and they are uncaring of those in need. They got stereotypes for those who lean blue. They're arrogant and elitist. They favor big government for its own sake. They're fiscally irresponsible. They're unpatriotic. They're anti-religion. They are anti-free speech if it's not politically correct. And they're hypersensitive snowflakes. This is what happens when we lump everybody together into one basket. I would imagine that regardless of which way you lean, you probably don't see yourself as these stereotypes. But this is what happens when the imagination of other people starts filling in the gaps because they aren't having conversations. So, a real quick reflection exercise. How might better understand of how your side is viewed by people who differ from you politically help you to listen and communicate and disagree better about policy differences? Now, this is a pretty heavy laden question. So just think about that for a minute. If we go back and we look at those stereotypes, okay? That if you're a person that leans blue, you need to know that this is how most people that lean red see you. And if you're a person that leans red, this is how most of the people that lean blue see you. So if we know these things, how might knowing about those stereotypes lead to better understanding of how your side is viewed by people who differ from you politically, and help you to disagree with them and listen to them better? Just think about it. Are you following me on that? All right. You are going to get back together in your groups of three
Same groups.
Yeah, stay with your same groups. It takes less time that way. Besides, you get to know each other. So you are going to have 8 minutes to discuss this. It's just going to be an open discussion. Just make sure that everybody has a chance to talk. Make sure that Guy loves to talk. Oh man, I want you today. That everybody has a chance to share. And if somebody's not clear on this, they need some clarification, raise your hand or talk to people in your group. But get with your group and I will give you a 1 minute warning, which will sound like this. And then at the end of the 8 minutes, I'm going to bring it a lot loud. Okay, all right.
Going on behind. I don't know. It's just a really. Wait till I eat. Yes, I do too. And I, uh, I get on. Well, yeah. I just don't. I'm asking for the conversations that are very serious. I mean, there's so many other more interesting things to talk about. Than my political views. Quite frankly, this is pretty funny. And the other ones, the word of people wanted to know. Yeah, it's true. They are very explicit. So it's not bad. And I wanted to lots of different days. Lots of different takes on this. Don't just throw out in one basket. Like for all hates to all lovers. I'm gonna see that. I know. That's how I'm. Yeah. Yeah. I ask a lot of questions more than I. Yeah. Where's their current thinking at? And that way I can better answer that. Yeah, if I find out that they're trying to, my own kids, it is way, right, way, so I have to have, we have a family gathering that I think. This is not going to the wrong thing. Fighting it, we're not going to the office, we're doing none of those things. So, they laughed at themselves and they got over that stuff. I mean, I grew up with unfortunately, sort of things that mom's so young, the hammer. Yeah. So, really are so good. Yeah. But that's not work. Yeah. It's not gonna, it's not gonna get that one right. Yeah. And we, yeah. They need to, that's very green, it's curious stuff. So we practice. Because I've got grown up children who have areas
very different view. And it's funny, I just see this mom asking lots of questions. But find out, what good ways to help them. Helps also. Yeah. Help them to see the opposite view. Help them to appreciate the opposite view. I had little daughters on that. The youngest is a 6, right? She got on her soapbox and she was better than determined if she bumped it hard enough. It all was worth it. And she was polarizing the family. The 2 daughters run. Said to her, I love my brother. And I'm saying, I said, well, I was so I had to get over that. It's not going to be helpful. So, because it was so many talk to the boss, couple of daughters, and say, let's, lots and lots of ways to deal with it. It's not fun. Yeah. Running to our borders. Right, so. That's it. Yeah. So whoever is her person's. Yeah. Right. I think that's. Yeah. Oh, she didn't pick up. And if it's the core guy, yeah, I think so. Actually, I'm supposed to. Some of the things, right? It's very good passion. It's like, oh, yeah,
Would anyone like to share something that you shared in the group about how understanding the stereotypes the other side holds of your side? How would it help people listen and communicate and disagree better about policy differences? Would anybody like to share?
One thing for me is it would help me not be defensive. I'm maybe expecting them to think this about me. And so I'm not going to get defensive and all riled up about it. But maybe I would ask them to clarify what they mean or, I don't know if I can.
So you're gonna try to, you already know they think that about you, or about you. And so you're gonna try to keep your defenses down.
Right, yeah. And And maybe we can continue a discussion where, you know, they could come to realize that isn't true.
You're not the stereotype.
Yeah.
I love it. Anybody else? Yes,
Well, I often run into raping groups. This company, most groups raping, and they go, you attend something, it's gonna be general. And, you know, it's often introduced as a liberal. And then I declared them about that. And they told me, yes, I am, but I'm way more liberal than the Democratic Party. And I have to tell you, having made garnered me any conversation.
yes. So, the question would be, tell me your name again.
Dave,
I'm gonna give a name tag to Dave, because I feel we're gonna be talking more today. So Dave, this is when you need to ask yourself, why are you doing that? No, I'm not going to answer. Just use your thinking about your thinking, why you do that. Anybody else want to? Yes.
But, you know, we brought up the word opportunity. I thought that was an interesting word, but this is an opportunity to change our thinking, make a choice, think differently than we do, and maybe be aware that we have that choice.
Be aware. That's one, one of the things is if we can realize how the other side views us, we can make sure we don't behave like that. Like arrogant or elitist, for instance. Yes.
Someone in our group brought up the idea of feelings, and then a lot of what we're talking about here is feelings. It's not data driven. It's feelings, and I think that what most people understand is confirmation bias, the desire to only look at things that confirm what you are. Most of that also is about feelings and is not data driven, not science in itself. And if we can walk those away a little bit from our feelings, then we can, it's going to be easier for us to start modifying how we view, these aspects of what we consider our own side or even the other side.
Well, that is perfect for what we're going to be talking about. So how do we challenge these stereotypes? It's been difficult, all at once here, make this a little easier. We all hold stereotypes. To say that we don't, we're not really totally being honest with ourselves. We would like to not, perhaps, but how can we begin to challenge the stereotypes of those who think differently? One of the first ways is to tell yourself that the other side is far more varied than the stereotype. In other words, it's not all black and white. There's plenty of shades of gray. Okay, when it comes to Bible thumpers, for instance, on red side, I can tell you my son leans conservative, but he's definitely not a Bible thumper. So it's more varied. So if you look at just the stereotype, you're not looking at the whole range of human beings. Also, acknowledge that the other side's political views and their motivations are no doubt much more complicated than the rhetoric you've been hearing. For instance, I have a friend of mine who said, well, the liberals just all wanted open border. Well, it's a lot more complicated than just Oh, they're close. There's so many variations to this. Also, recognize that life experiences that are informing their views are likely very different from your own. If they grew up in a small town somewhere that depended upon the coal industry, and everybody in their family lost their jobs, and their town was dying, they would see things through a different lens than you do because of their life experiences. So recognizing that helps us. Also, Dolly, develop relationships with people who have different points of view. Because once you get to know somebody, you don't see them like that stereotype anymore. They're a human being. They're not an other anymore. So go out of your way to get to know people personally who have different points of view politically than you do. This is one of the reasons why I love traveling to different countries. The more we travel, the more our worldview is enlarged. And I am very grateful for the fact that I've been able to do that. That I've been able to go to the Middle East, and I've been able to go to countries in Europe and Australia and different places. And I lived in Central America for a while. And you get to the point where you know people from so many different backgrounds, and they how differently they may see the world than you. Also, read and listen to thought leaders. Let me explain what thought leaders in a minute. On the other side, we present complex arguments. There are a lot of people far to the right and far to the left that I might not consider a thought leader. They're people that are rabble rousers that are just trying to stir things up. But there are thoughtful leaders who lean red, and there are thoughtful leaders who lean blue. Take the time to step away from your normal reading and read some of what they have to say, or listen to some of what they have to say. You may not agree with all of it, but it gives you a better idea of where they're coming from. And if you really want to go all out, you can work on developing an understanding of the history and the current strands of thought on the other side by reading about it. And in your handout today, and I don't want you to go there right now, but in the very back, there's a lot of books listed, and there's a lot of voices to listen to on podcasts, magazines that will help you to understand. So this is a good starting point. Also, make a distinction between positions and people. You can believe that somebody's point of view is entirely wrong without believing that everybody who holds that point of view is stupid or has bad motivations. Make a distinction between policies and core values. Policies are enacted as a way, policies are a means to an end to enact or support values, but they're not the values themselves. And all of us, once in a while, are inconsistent in terms of what we say or do. Don't jump on that and say, oh, they're a hypocrite, because they did that now. Resist that pull toward assuming that any inconsistencies on the other side, oh, they say they believe in this, but look at what they just did. It doesn't always reveal hypocrisy. Sometimes it can come from blind spots that we all have. And inevitable tensions between competing values. Like you may hold a certain value, but you may feel ambiguous about certain parts of that. So be reluctant to assign a label of hypocrite to a large number of fellow citizens. So how do we have non-polarizing talk? How do we talk in ways that are not polarizing? In other words, how do you not say to your 48-year-old daughter that she's acting like a 13-year-old? That'll be here. Okay. In your handout, in part 3, it says how to talk to the other side in a non-polarizing way. So what's really nice is you guys are not going to have to take notes. It's all right there. So there's some mistakes we want to avoid. One of them is a no-brainer. Avoid pejorative labels like they're wing nuts, they're Bible thumpers, they're libtards, they're snowflakes. Okay, that is definitely polarizing talk. Avoid using that even among your closest friends who think like you do. Avoid using the term, they all are like that, or its equivalent. These are classic stereotyping phrases. They all hate this. They all want open borders. They all want police in front of every single grocery store. By the way, when we lived in the country of Panama, there were police outside of every grocery store. That's a little disconcerting. There's a lot of people that vote for somebody that may not like that person, but they vote for them for policy reasons. So one of the mistakes that we want to avoid is feeling like everybody that votes for a particular politician must be just like that politician. And work on criticizing the idea rather than the motive behind it. For example, here's an example, a blue example. We want to criticize the idea, not the motive. So, climate denial is the riskiest idea I've seen in my lifetime because we're running out of time to prevent lasting damage to the planet. That's an example of criticizing the idea. When we're criticizing the motive, it's where we go. Climate change deniers care more about the fossil fuel industry than the planet. Do you see how one was attacking a person and one was attacking an idea? Or from the red perspective, climate science is uncertain. And it's uncertain enough that I don't think we should start overhauling our way of life. Okay, that was the idea. They were criticizing the idea. Now we're listening to criticizing the motive. Climate change supporters have a liberal agenda to overregulate the economy and tax us to death. All this goes back to metacognition and mindfulness. Be aware when you're talking. Are you attacking a person or are you attacking an idea? There's a big difference between the two. And remember, especially when you're talking to people that are like-minded, believe me, you're gonna throw some of them for a loop if you stop the polarizing talk you've been doing. They're gonna begin to wonder if you're a traitor by now. Because why aren't you jumping in there and being rah, rah, rah? Okay? It's always a good idea to maybe criticize your own side a little bit, like you can say in a conversation. Now, I really think we're losing that group because we haven't been listening to them very well. Or sometimes our leaders talk as if they have the final answer to the immigration problem, and I don't think they do. Also, there's always something positive to be said about the other side. I know you may have to dig, but there is something positive. Like, you know, I read about a liberal commentator who said something really interesting about this. And I didn't talk about that before. Or I think maybe sometimes their criticism has some validity, even though I don't agree with their solution. And try to use drummers, thought experiments. Imagine what would happen if you were sitting in your local, what's a good restaurant around here? There aren't any. What is a restaurant around here? All right, I'll just say a Denny's. I know you don't know. Let's say you're sitting in a Denny's and you're sitting in a booth with three like-minded friends and you guys are going to town about the other side. And what you don't know is the person sitting in the booth next behind you is part of that other group. Would they feel respected by the type of things you were saying? Or would they feel grossly misrepresented? You see, this is how we depolarize the country. We've got to be mindful about the words that come out of our mouth. It doesn't mean we can't take a strong stand on what we believe in. Just don't do it in a demoralizing or dehumanizing manner, because that makes the problem so much bigger. So, look in your handout on part 2 and 3, where it lists the depolarizing strategies. And the one I want you to look at in particular is the one where it says ways to counteract stereotypes in your own thinking. That's on part 2. Everybody look on part 2 where it says ways to counteract stereotypes. This is when we talked about they're more varied, their political views are more complicated than the rhetoric. Read or listen to thought leaders on the other side. Recognize that life experiences inform their views differently. Develop relationships with a variety of people. Or try to understand the history by doing a lot of reading. So I want you to think to yourself, what is just one of those things you personally might want to work on? And we're not going to do a breakout group on this one. I'm just going to ask for some sharing on the internet. But just look at those. There's 6 of them. Which one of them do you think you might like to work on? If anybody doesn't know where this is, let me know. Bob, did you find it? You got it. Ellen, okay.
With the help from my friends.
We get live with a little help. And just look at those and think, one of them we'd like to try. We don't want to try to work that would be great. Like to take it for enough. All right, who would like to share one that you don't even need to go into detail? Just tell us, what's one you'd like to try?
Thought leaders. The thought leaders.
Okay, the thought leaders. Read and listen to thought leaders who are on the other side. Good. That's a good first step, because normally we turn the station off. Oh, I've got to read that one. Yes.
Core values, don't look so much at the sign in your neighbor's front yard. We would look at the way that they're living their lives. And who they're taking care of.
Yes.
Big as a neighbor.
And again, that's different life experiences. What are they doing with their lives? They look so demonic after all of it. What else would you like to try? Yes.
Well, I think that this one of them as far as, follow yourself at the other side is one of the great things, the greater fun. Let's say, I believe that climate change is happening and I want to cite some, scientific evidence, for instance. That the other side might be open to me presenting that as a factual evidence and say, well, maybe I never thought of that, or you bring to my attention some things I didn't know. I'm just saying that that's a possibility.
And then they also might say to you, I've got an article here for you, Jordan. And then that's where you go, oh, I didn't know that either. You may not agree with it,
Right.
but it's, yeah. What? Yes.
Well, I would say inside loans,
Oh,
you come with the study of climate change. Let's say, that's what I experienced the other side. Okay, oh yeah, you're right. So
where are we? And that is exactly right. And this is one of the things that especially people that lean blue are criticized for as being arrogant, elitist, and overeducated. And they oftentimes don't really like showing the marketplace. So it's on the context and how it's working. You could say, I read a really interesting article on climate change. You may not agree with it, but this is what I learned from it. And then that way they don't feel attacked. Dave?
There's a time of these conversations that we're in a conversation with somebody. I mean, do we have to approach it as a teaching moment? Like we're gonna ramp something down your throat and they're gonna, and if that's like, if we're planning on that, they're gonna get turned off right away.
You are absolutely right, because they don't want to be talked down to like they're ignorant. And that's why it's not a teachable moment. You're right, absolutely.
This is about how we change our thinking.
How
It's not telling the other side your scientific data to shove it in their face.
Yes.
This is supposed to be looking at scientific data that challenges our own ideas.
That's very good, Bob. So what you're going to want to do is read thought leaders that, or from scientists, for instance, climate change, and read other perspectives that you have. This goes against the confirmation bias. And this is why it's so tough, because we want to only read things that reinforce our own thinking. And it's difficult not to, okay,
Because maybe reading that stuff, it gives us a better understanding of how they got their nutrients on.
exactly, because we want to understand the others better. And this is why we want to read the material they're reading. I gotta tell you, troops, or not all right. There are times when we are mistaken, or maybe we could see things a little differently. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna suggest that the other side, I mean, like you see that term, that sometimes up against biblical prophecies and it says it in the Bible. I've got a mess like this is in science, you're up against people that believe with all their heart this is only one way to believe. And when you're up against that, that's a trouble.
When you're up against people that their beliefs about climate are rooted in biblical teachings, you can't be pointing out to them they're wrong. It reminds me of when I was teaching sixth grade and we were teaching about early man. And at that time, Australopithecus was the earliest known human, and that was Lucy. And Lucy had a head about the size of a softball. And I had mother come in and tell me, she said, we do not believe in that. We believe in the book of Genesis in the Bible. And I don't care if my child fails the test, but they are going to stand by our beliefs. So I thought to myself, how can I take this kid? How can I move this kid where they don't feel like they're on the spot? They have to choose between what they've been taught in their family and this test. So I reworded the test and I put, according to scientists, Australopithecus is earliest known human. And that way that child is not forced to choose. Because he could say yes, according to scientists. Well, maybe not what I think happened. That way, and I don't even know that. But anyway, does anybody have one more stereotype strategy that they want to work on to break your own stereotype together? You want to share? Yes.
I was just kind of amused by reading the thought leader on the other side who present complex arguments. And I thought to myself, who would be that thought leader, Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon?
I don't think I would put them personally in that category. But there's a lot of people that I could. In fact, if you look on the back of there's a lot of good ones. And I don't know if you'll see those names. But anyway, let's go on. We are going to take, we got a little bit of a late start. And we do want to eat. And so instead of a 10-minute break, would it be okay if we just took a 5-minute quick bathroom and drink break and came back in 5 minutes? Is that good? Yeah. Okay, bathrooms, through that door, you can't miss them in 5 minutes. We can go back.
Better fit. I don't.
Got the hand out. And, yeah. There'll be more. I am. And there's yes. You know. Definitely, yeah. Conversation to have helps build steps. Yeah, like dust. So it should be parent. Yeah. Express it now. Those feelings. That's how long you set it up. Having a seal. That's I think so. And it's what she does to every that now. Good. Just like, you got a good face.
Yeah. I'm thinking it's like a fun.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's so much more. And then, that's for the it's the guys. It's like five and the ones there. Five. Right, so it's everyone. Okay, done. Oh my God. I just keep close, it takes time. You give me the time. It's whatever needs like that. Yeah, because I like still days. Because it's usually what time. Yeah, yes. All out well. We probably welcome to this. Yeah. I was waiting to sound. Yes. I'll send you. Yes, I. Okay. And I said, yes, it's still here for you. Yes. Yeah. This is the way to get it. Yeah. They'll get it. I'm saying somebody else. Now that's the money just is.
Okay, so here are the questions. So let's get into sex skills. Let's start to have conversations that we've been avoiding. Let's learn how to talk to people in ways that do not contribute to polarization. Let's do what America needs right now, which is to start talking to each other. So let's learn how to do it in a non-polarizing way. Some mistakes to avoid. Coming across as this came up a little while ago. Coming across as judgmental or more enlightened than the other person is. Oh, that's gonna shut the door in your face real quick. Or with your friends, if you want to stay in your friend group and you like your friends and you want to be included in lunch with your friends, don't be too defensive on the other side. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't bring up some points. But the truth is that we all kind of like being in a group where we feel comfortable. And if you all of a sudden go in there and went, I just went to this great racial workshop, and I just learned how to do this and this, and this is what I get down on the other side, and they're gonna go sit in another booth. Okay, so just be careful. Mistakes to avoid, don't be contemptuous of both sides. Being cynical is not being polarized. Also, a mistake to avoid is defending a particular leader or a fringe group. Focus on what is being said about the broad swath of people, not the fringe groups. This is part of what the news media does best, is they share the views of the most extremes. The majority of America is not a fringe group. Okay, so now we are going to work in our small groups anymore. We are going to work in partnership. Now, before you can have a conversation about any issue that has the possibility of being contentious, you've got to have a connection with that person. You don't just throw up and say, hey, let's talk about border control. I want to tell you all about my thoughts on that. That door just got shut right in your face. You don't have a relationship with the person. This goes for also social media. Don't get in arguments with people that have no face and no name other than whatever it says on next door. Stay out of that fray. Those are people that want to escalate things. We do not want to escalate tensions. So if you are going to have a conversation about a touchy subject or a potentially hot subject, it's important that you have some sort of connection to that person. That maybe you share a common history with them. Like maybe they're your kid, or your sister, or your best friend, or your husband. Maybe there's somebody you know from your community. Maybe you haven't, gotten to know them real well. But know that these are people that you can talk about things you have in common, like kids, grandkids, occupation, hobbies, church. You could maybe talk about common concerns that you both have. And timing is everything. If somebody's rushing around trying to get dinner on the table, and they've got a 3-year-old pulling on their skirt and a 1-year-old on their hip, and they're trying to get dinner on, this is probably not a good time to have a conversation about ice, okay? Unless it's the kind that comes from the freezer. So timing is very important to have a conversation. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to get into partners. And this is where we're going to mix it up now a little bit. And I know this is a small community and a lot of you are here know each other, but try to find somebody you don't know so well. And I'm going to give you about 8 minutes just to talk. Just to talk about anything. Get to know each other. Find out some things you might have in common. Form a little connection with that person. Isn't that fun? Yeah. All right, so on the count of three, don't jump up yet. On the count of three, you're gonna get up, you're gonna look around the room,